What is up, ladies and gentlemen of the internet? My name is Jade. Thoroughly enjoying the new dig. Simon, what do you think of the new layout real fast?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, Jade and Hannah. Lovely to be
Hello.
here. Thank you for having me. As always, the new layout, Jade, is just chef's kiss. It's beautiful. Loving the revamp. Good
now,
stuff.
now, I will say this. I'm not totally convinced about the purple myself, but it's an iterative process, and we'll see how it goes. But if you're at home and you're looking at this and you have an opinion about it, do let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. But Simon, how's your week been?
Oh, it's been pretty full on, mate. Just finally been able to have some of my own personal time in the weekend instead of working. So it's been good to actually get back out on the golf course. Thanks that it's level 3. Even though I may look like a young strapping lad, my hobbies are quite um, senior. I like a bit of golf and a bit of surfing.
Uh, I wouldn't say that surfing is a senior sport, so
Mm.
surfing's really cool, man.
The way I surf, it's a pretty senior sport. Nothing too extreme.
And also joining us, sometimes she does, sometimes she doesn't, but today she is my good friend and lovely assistant, Hannah. How's it
Hey.
going, Hannah?
Great, thanks. You're right.
What's the
to be
latest?
It's great to be now in level 3, and just been another busy week, but having a lovely chilled weekend, and I hope everyone's doing well.
Yep, and today is episode 6 of the Heroes What We Know podcast, and no particular reason why we kind of like rebranded now. As I said before, it's iterative. We just wanted to do it. What I am excited about happening today is we are going to be having a guest on the show.
Cool.
So someone known to me, Mahia, is connected to the Freedom New Zealand movement.
Cool.
That's happening on the 2nd of October. I'm just really interested in what they're trying to achieve. So at the top of the hour today, we're going to get into that. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, the scenes might change, but some things don't. And the one thing that doesn't is the question of the day. And I told these guys before we came on this afternoon, it's more of a request, not a question. So you ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Let's go, Jade.
Let's get into it. So, the question of the day, well, the statement of the day is reveal your takeaway exploits. Simon, do you want to go first?
Oh, happily. So, are we looking for just from going into level 3, or just some
From level
takeaway
3.
exploits?
Yeah,
Okay,
from
right,
level
yeah.
3.
Right. I mean, I've got it in my head. I remember the first morning of of being able to get takeaways for lunch. I went out to the bakery, got myself a steak and cheese pie and cheese and vegetable quiche with a coconut latte to wash it all down. Man,
Coconut latte, this
yeah,
guy.
if I have coffee, normally it's black, so it was a little bit of a treat. And I don't really drink the cow's milk too much, so I had coconut milk instead, which is delicious. And I didn't really expect it, but I should have. But after that first proper coffee, I was like feeling a little bit shaky. It just shows you that those Nespresso pods and the kind of instant coffee just isn't the same as the proper one.
Yeah.
And then since then, I had some Chinese takeaways, which was what was that, barbecue pork and shrimp, fried rice with combination meat chop suey on the side and some wontons. That was delicious. And For lunch today, I had a soul bowl, which was Korean fried chicken on rice with some vegetables, and that was so good with some kurma fries on the side.
Wow.
Yum.
Yeah.
Simon has totally got into it, guys.
Yeah.
That is decent, Simon. So I have been a little bit more conservative than you, I'm going to have to say.
Yeah, good stuff.
Can I just go first?
Yeah,
for a second?
please.
The reason why I want to go first is because
Hannah's going to tell the truth.
we live together. So I will literally say the first morning when I could, I woke up and Jade said, so instead of getting Uber Eats, can you go get a coffee? And then the next thing was, you can pick up some McDonald's, can't you too, for breakfast? So the thing I want to say is, great. I went to McDonald's, our closest McDonald's, and they're not doing contactless deliveries. They're not doing contactless pickups. That is literally, but they were quite happily doing pickups for Uber. So
It's
Uber
weird.
drivers. So I thought that was really bad.
That is pretty weird.
It was great. Just went next door and got a Starbucks. Just a good old cappuccino for Jade and a latte for me. And I have to say, Simon, I was feeling a bit shaky afterwards too. But it was really good. And it's been interesting to know what else is available. And I have to say, the one thing I haven't had is Chinese, and I'm feeling like it. And the difference is, and I would have thought of that, I would have thought, why not? There has been no subsidy, no discounts for Uber Eats, for the delivery. I thought, wow, wouldn't you do a delivery? But our local pizza store, which we haven't gone to, they're literally doing discounted delivery. I thought, wow, good on you. Over to you, Jade. You can say what we've had and tell us the truth.
So I just want to stay with that point, but first of all, we'll go to the chat. It looks like Berland is in the chat, so it's sort of feeling like we're not paying attention to him. Berland, so good to see you. Thanks for being here. In terms of what you're saying, yeah, I have been really surprised how there's been no delivery discounts. I suppose if you're a company and you have as much leverage as you do at the moment, why wouldn't you take advantage? I think you said just about everything we've eaten.
No, we've had a few other things.
Okay, remind me.
Dinner on Friday.
Oh, dinner on Friday was bento box. Yeah, Evelyn got into that, my daughter, and we had some dumplings.
Oh, nice choice.
Yeah, and what did you say? We had McDonald's for breakfast. I'm just gonna have to own that one. Not ideal, but we did it. Yeah.
And then what do we have when we're out in the sun on Saturday? Enjoying the sun finally.
Oh, the one thing we haven't spoken about is the Starbucks. Mate, I'm just like that. Starbucks is life for me. Simon knows that I'm a basic bitch when it comes to coffee, so you know. Simon does the coconut and I do the Starbucks. That's how we roll.
Yeah, but I actually drink coffee though. You just drink Starbucks.
Oh, what? Ow. While I recover from that burn, ladies and gentlemen.
We have had one other thing. We were picking up Jade's daughter, and what do we know? The good old fashion bakery was open.
Oh yeah, like the bakeries by the dairy, Simon, the bakeries no one hears of unless you're a local. You know, those kind of bakeries.
That's exactly the ones I go to. They're the best.
Yeah, and I haven't been to one in so long because I live in the city, and that kind of thing doesn't exist. So I was out in Blockhouse Bay, and there was one, and I had a custard pie, dude.
Oh,
Custard pie with the cinnamon, man.
That's a classic. That's the classic bakery treat. Every little bakery across Auckland, maybe even New Zealand,
now
it's a custard pie.
If you often can't get them at cafes at all, so that was nice.
It feels like a diabetic's confessional right now, though, because I definitely should not be eating that kind of stuff on a regular basis, and that's the point. Moderation, right?
Forgive me, Father, for I have ordered Uber Eats.
But to be in level 3, to be able to order takeaways, we're gonna get into these restrictions with our guest later on at the top of the hour. We're gonna explore what exactly they think we should be doing about these restrictions. They don't feel that these level restrictions are just at all. So I look forward to getting into that.
And one thing I was trying to say too was the whole thing with, we're being real that we actually had McDonald's for breakfast, but when I actually went, they were literally saying only Uber Eats drivers can pick up. Well, what's the difference if you have Uber Eats drivers drive all over Auckland and then they're picking up? Well, isn't that worse than just me who lives in one location? I'm not going from here to there.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure Simon is well versed on why that's better than just picking up your own food directly, but it didn't make sense to me at the time.
Can't draw on a logical thought on why that would be a sensible guideline to enforce. It just seems like something McDonald's and Uber Eats thought they could, rub their hands together and make a little bit of extra money.
Yeah, I don't know, but if you wanna, maybe you're not in New Zealand, maybe you're definitely not in Auckland, and you're not subject to these level 3 guidelines. Go ahead and let us know in the chat what was the last takeout meal that you had. Let us be envious. Let us explore your palate with you. But for now, we're gonna move to the first topic of the day, and interestingly, there's not gonna be an article for this one. I'm gonna hand it over to you, Hannah.
So, hi everybody. I would just like to say that, it's been highlighted that everybody's doing quite hard in Auckland, and there's been food parcels available, but the thing is, I didn't think it was the best location to be doing it. So I thought it would have made more sense somewhere else. But we were walking home on Friday, and it was so good. This van, they were literally driving around the city, and the frustration is I cannot find a link for who they were. So it'd be really interesting to find.
We forgot the name, eh?
Yeah, find out a bit more about who they were, and maybe get them on to the show one day and actually talk about what they actually do.
But you've got to sell the drama here. There was a lot of drama.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm just getting to. So we were walking along, and they literally said, "Oh, do you want some hangi?" And straight away, Jade's daughter said no, and she told us afterwards that she thought they were scammers, and that's why she said no straight away. And I kind of paused, and Jade said yes, and and they were literally legit. They're like, right, here's 3 hangis, so just full on meals, and 3
2
loaves.
meats, vegetables. There was stuffing in there. There was like one of those new potatoes. There was new potatoes in there, skin on. These things are cooked in the ground. Sorry.
And and these there were 3 loaves of bread that they gave us, and then they gave us
Handmade loaves,
and they gave us fruit and also milk. So this was like, I'm trying to carry this. It was such a struggle to try and get it home, but it tasted so good, and it was just such a good thing to give back to others. They were really trying to keep COVID restrictions that met a distance, but just thinking of others, and they weren't targeting at a specific place. They were just thinking, right, we'll actually see who's on the street and who might be able to, who might want a meal. So that was a really good thing to do. But a hangi actually takes a long time to cook and has so much flavour. And I was going to say, this is actually cooked in the ground. And Simon, do you want to just give us a little overview of how you actually do cook a hangi?
Yeah, I mean, I've not been the person to lead a whole hangi. I've been involved in putting one down, but got told by a close colleague of mine who, by his words himself, was quite well versed in the art of a hangi. He told a whole bunch of hilarious stories around it, but essentially, you've got to start, depending on when you want to eat, you've got to start maybe 12 or 10 hours before you want to eat. That's when you've got to start from the very beginning. You need a bit of an open grass area, enough area, because you're going to have to build a fire, and you don't want to having to put this near any buildings. But if you've got a nice bit of area, what you need to do is dig a hole, and what you want to do is dig a small hole to put the stones that you want to use the hangi in, and then build a fire on top of them. And then what happens is you build the fire, and then the fire goes down onto all the stone, and the heat goes on the stones, and you heat up all the stones. And while you're doing that, you're digging a massive hole for the hangi. So your hole needs to be as wide and as long as the trays that you're putting in it. So hangis go down in baskets or trays, so you need to make sure your hole can fit them all in, and a little bit of extra around it. So you've got a big hole for all your baskets, and then what you do is you've got a fire going with the stones in it to heat up the stones of a hangi. You've got the meat goes on the bottom tray, so mainly it's lots of roast chickens. They'll put whole bits of roast beef and stuff, or bits of steak, all the meat on the bottom, and then you put that so if you wait for ages for the stones to heat up before you put the food in. You put your hot stones at the bottom, and then you put a couple of wet blankets down on the stones so that they don't singe anything. Then you put your first tray down, then you put a wet blanket or wet cloth or something over the basket, and then you put the next one down, and that's all your vegetables. And then you basically just fill up your hole with meat, and it's designed for cooking for big groups, because it's very hard to make a hangi for just like a family of 4. It'd be a tiny hole, and it's still going to take you hours, so it's not worth the investment. It's a bulk supply type of preparing food. It's really, really valuable when you're needing to cater for a few whānau. But yeah, essentially what you do is you get these hot stones to sit at the bottom of a big hole in the ground. You pile your food on top with the meat at the bottom, because that needs the hottest temperatures, and then you basically put all your food on top of it, put a cloth on top, and then you pack the dirt back on top so it's level with the ground and a little bit of a rise. And essentially what you're doing is you watch how much steam is coming out of the...
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, how much steam is coming out of the ground and how hot it is, because if you don't get to a certain hotness at the very beginning, your food will never cook, because essentially what you want is
unsafe to eat as well.
Yeah. So as long as you get to a certain level of hotness at the very beginning, you know that you just need to leave it in for longer for it to get cooked, right? So like what my friend said is, once you've done a few hangies, you can tell that as long as within the first hour of it being underground that it's remained at a certain temperature, you can kind of pull it out with pretty good certainty, depending on how well done you want the food. And so you basically just leave it in the ground for a few hours and then pull off the dirt, pull it all out, and then it's essentially just the most well-tended, juicy, steamed meal you'll ever have. All the vegetables just fall apart in your mouth. Same with the meat. I mean, yeah. And then, did you get any fried bread with your hangi? Fried bread is just the best. Like,
no, so it was handmade loaves, but it wasn't fried bread. I made Hannah heat up some butter so we could get it, like simulating fried bread. But do you want to talk about what fried bread is, maybe?
I mean, fried bread it's what it is on the tin. It's great stuff. You get your dough mixture, and it's similar, I guess, to like donuts, and that it's bread that is used to you deep fry it to get it to rise and bake. But fried bread is just like small little buns of fried bread with, it's customary to have them with butter when they're warm, and then if you're getting a bit decadent with it, you can add jam and cream to fried bread, and that is just at its next level.
It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, who would ever need scones if you just had fried bread with jam and cream? I just noticed that there's a comment in the chat we hadn't acknowledged.
Clive Bixby, thanks for being here. I was waiting for a poignant moment to come to that. Thank you, Simon. I did see. Clive, thanks for being in the chat. We love that you're here today, and thanks for being part of the podcast.
Thank you. Hi, Clive. Thank you so much for explaining that, Simon, because I would not have been able to explain it as well as you did, because I've not been even involved in putting down a hangi.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I didn't mention it. Sorry, Hannah, but it's like it's a multicultural style of preparing food. It's unique. Well, this style is unique to New Zealand, but there are similar versions in different Polynesian islands. It's called an umu in
Samoa.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, and they have a much better version. See, the person I learned how to do a hangi off, who told me that those instructions, he said that the way that the Samoan do it's super impressive. It's it's way quicker, way more efficient, and doesn't take as long. So it's interesting to hear that even though he loves a hangi, that he realizes that it may not be the most efficient way to cook a meal.
All right, you.
Can I just say one other thing?
Sure thing.
Bit of confession that it was great to. Hangi is very smoky too, so that is a really good flavour of it.
You're making me so hungry.
And I'm
so hungry already.
And I was going to say, you were the one who actually introduced me to fry bread. I'd never had it before I met you.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not. Thank you so much, Jade. Thank you, Simon.
It's really bad for you, by the way. So
I know it is.
So I'm glad you appreciate it.
I had never had it before you, and it's really bad for you.
Yeah.
So you introduced it to me.
So before I keel over in hunger pains, why don't we move to our first news story of the day? I'm salivating and all sorts of things over here. Simon, I believe you're about to tell us. Hold on, before we go to that, Clive says, everything bad for you tastes great. Absolutely agree.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
absolutely agree. And, as the French say, the three main ingredients to good food are butter, butter, and butter. I'll never forget that a French person told me that, yeah.
Yeah. I really did not know what you mean.
Croissant, right? It's just butter and bread.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But right about now, Simon, you're about to explain to us how we're about to enter World War III.
Well, potentially, we never know. I mean, with these kind of stories, it could always just be just trying to stoke a little bit of fear, or this could actually be a serious marker that we could be potentially going into some unstable domestic, what do you call it, political and military events. From butter to World War III, Clive says, we are a very agile team here on Here's What We Know, because we know quite a lot about a lot. And we know our fried bread, and we know when US and China are posturing to potentially secure some important geographical areas. Basically, what this article talks about
I believe you handled that comment rather well, Simon, may I say.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, for this article, what it talks about is just it could just be this standard posturing that doesn't really actually mean anything. It's just good enough to write up an article about it, but it could just be standard operations for both of these countries. But it doesn't really seem like that on first glance from my side. It does actually seem a little bit concerning. But essentially what is happening is you're having naval submarines hanging out just a few miles off the coast of Hawaii. You're having the US sending their warships in and around these Asian groups of islands. There's lots of these small groups of islands in the Asian Pacific Ocean that are covered in Chinese army bases to help extend China's defenses out from the mainland. And all of those countries, things like Taiwan and these other nations that would like to be separate but are actually controlled by China. And if you speak out too loud about saying they aren't China, you can disappear. But all these little nations are what's looking like getting militarized a little bit by China, and it's hard to kind of pick out some of the.
Do you want me to scroll for you at all, Simon?
Yeah. Well, just keep going. I suppose it's talking about like the first part's talking about the partnership between Australia and the United States. Stay where you are.
No.
That it's right in the middle. This is the AU ex-US partnership. It says Beijing will severely damage peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific, and Beijing is demanding to know whether Australia regards China a partner or a threat. So what happens is you've got America who are signing nuclear submarine deals with Australia and aligning themselves with the UK and any sort of patriotic aligning with the US normally requires a pretty hostile response from China. They don't like that. They just want all these countries like Australia to be quiet little countries and play their role in the import and export trade and not to criticize their country's policy. But then even if they just align with a different country, it just has to be the States. Even just doing that is enough to be considered an active threat against China, and that's what you can see here. China are really good about as soon as there's any sort of mention of the country, they're really good at trying to force out a stance from the other political leaders. They say we believe this is an act of aggression against China. They can all it could be saying is, China is a really big polluter, or you need to do something to address their pollution levels, and you'll have a Chinese diplomat saying, we strongly refute this person's input and opinion on Chinese economic performance, blah blah blah. They're really good at just attacking any sort of statement. If you scroll down, Jade, just see if we can, if you just keep going and then stop. Yeah, so I'll scroll back. Oh no, you got, there we go. So
Yep.
China claims the Parcel and Spratly Islands and almost all of the rocks and reefs in the South China Sea, many of which are territorial waters, which claimed to Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Brunei, Philippines, and Taiwan. So all those countries, what they're talking about is like the small, tiny dotted reefs and islands,
Thank you.
all through the Indo-Chinese Sea. Closer to those are bigger islands, which are supposed to be independent countries, but China is claiming those islands and putting military bases on all of them. The other thing that's not so military focused, but they've got something called the Belton Roadway project, which is essentially what they do is provide terribly cheap loans to poor Pacific nation countries to do all their infrastructure projects, and then in return they're in eternal debt to China because they'll never be able to pay off that much money ever because their country's GDP is so tiny, and so they end up having to allow China to put a military base in or to build a high-end resort that's run by China, and all the money goes straight out to China and it's filled with Chinese employees, and that kind of stuff is happening all throughout the Pacific, and it has been for the last maybe 10 years at least.
Don't know if you can see the chat there, Simon. Clive says our leader is senile, but I think most Americans stand with Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, thanks, Clive. I mean, the three countries have always been tight allies for most of modern history. But I think New Zealand has, well, ever since the early 2000s, maybe even the late 90s, New Zealand has started to turn its major allegiance to China. I mean, the immense amount of trade that we send their way just made us quite vulnerable to moving to the terms that they dictated to us. And I think through successive governments here, and I'm sure Jade, you'll agree with me, the policy and just the way the country's operated from a macro scale, we've definitely moved away from working with the US closely and making more deals with China, like especially in the private business sector. There are a lot of companies in New Zealand called Silver Ferns or New Zealand #1 company or something like that, and
Yep.
it's not.
Gotcha. And you raise a good point, Simon. Our previous government actually tried to make some serious inroads with relationships with China, but even though you're saying we're closer to China than the US, the current government has slowed that down a bit because they don't like the optics, because China isn't necessarily known for a couple of things that have been raised with me. One is human rights, and two is the treatment of the environment. That's probably where we misalign a bit with China. But you're right, we are closer to China than the US.
There's an interesting angle that some people take to sympathize with China's current economic practices of the last few decades, like kind of in recent history after they lost the power of the royals through China, and it turned into what they call a democracy, but the communism and that took over. They didn't have a chance to prosper under the guise of capitalism like in the States, and so that's what they feel like they're doing. They feel like they've for the last few decades they've had the chance to prosper economically through capitalism, or not through capitalism, through immense socialism in their country, but then benefiting from the capitalism that they were exporting to. So some people feel like they're a little bit sympathetic to what China do because they were so, I guess, held back or weren't allowed to prosper for so long based on the way the country worked with the ruled by the royals. I mean, it's interesting. I don't really think it's extremely valid, but it's just kind of interesting to think some people can justify a country's behavior like that because it's like, oh well, they needed time to catch up and do the exploitative business practices that we got to do.
I don't have the clip for this, and I always feel bad when I start my sentence with I don't have the clip for this, but I remember seeing somewhere that President Biden said that communism was actually a good idea and they were kind of looking into it.
Well, I mean, yeah, they've been trying to enact more socialist policies since Biden took over. I mean, Obama started it.
So if America wants to be more communist, like, doesn't that mean they largely align with what China's doing? Like, how help a guy break it down in simple terms? Like, wouldn't that work out better for international relations?
Well, you're almost there, Jade. But what some people believe in circles is that the country itself, America, is compromised by agents of foreign origin and making them align closer to China was exactly their mission and to socialize one of the last bastions of what people called liberty and personal freedom. They their goal was to socialize it from the inside out, and the best way to do that would be to hold, the presidency or the House of Representatives and change things piece by piece.
My goodness me. So, in terms of this, Simon, not to put you on the spot, but who do you think's going to come out on top with this posturing as you referred to?
Well, I mean, it seems like the states have made so many enemies. They don't have too many friends left, and like I was saying, China has just got its teeth in just so many countries, everything through the Pacific. Just to kind of back it up with an anecdote, I've had friends who've worked for civil construction companies here in New Zealand, and they used to love being able to go to like Fiji and Tonga and these places for 6 months to do these roading projects, all run by New Zealand contracted companies and probably done with quite, and fair and ethical pricing because they're a Pacific neighbor and we give all those countries aid money anyway. So why would we be, extorting them through civil projects? And so that was a thing that has happened all throughout the Pacific. New Zealand and Australia would do these projects for these countries, and they would leave like the equipment there, and the local companies could take it and use it and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden, I can't remember how long ago, that all stopped. The Chinese government gave all these loans to these Pacific nation countries, but it's purely for the use of these infrastructure projects, which then the Chinese companies take ownership of once it's built. They employ Chinese people that move to those specific countries because it's so cheap there compared to where they're coming from, and it's just basically privatizing these little Pacific islands into Chinese little states because they're the only people that live there.
I heard a term for this: economic colonization. So it's like taking your land without forcing it. Like you offered the land, you offered the contract. China had the capital. There was no other way you were going to get that capital, but it comes with a whole bunch of strings, as you said. And I think another example was this is so random, I apologize, but since we're on the topic, I really want to share it. The privatization of the telecommunications in Rarotonga. So Telecom Rarotonga used to be owned by the New Zealand government because Rarotonga is governed by New Zealand, which has pros and cons, and maybe there's a topic for another show. But in recent years, it's been privatized by an Asian company. Now, I can't be super sure that it's Chinese, but I'd bet money that it is a Chinese company. And ever since then, you know, I last visited in, what was it, 2019?
Yeah.
Right before the COVID stuff. Most locals are saying they can no longer afford phone and data in Rarotonga.
Can I just elaborate on that too? What they've gone and done, and they focus specific packages for those who are holidaying. So raise the prices and do specific and make it look like, right, we're doing special packages for short-term guests. So it means that your day-to-day phone bill is more expensive than what it would be to be a guest on the island. So
I wouldn't even say it's super affordable for tourists, though.
no, it's definitely not. So they raise the prices for locals and then inflate it for locals. It then looks better for those who are just visiting the island, but it is still very expensive. So, and just to follow on to your story too, Simon, with the 10 years, it really makes me question, because I was then looking at something a couple of days ago, and it was literally about how there was a fishing vessel off the islands of Fiji, in between Fiji and another island and Australia, and it had been there for a couple of months, and basically it wasn't a fishing vessel. All it was a ship to spy, and they were spying
Wow.
They were spying on Fiji, and they were spying on Australia, and seeing, well, what are the weak points for Australia, and what are the weak points for Fiji, and how can we get our hands into actually these countries. So
Yeah.
I can definitely see this has just progressed, and then where are we now?
Simon,
that's the thing. Sorry, Jade. I
go
wanted
ahead.
to jump on Hannah. What she was saying was, the Chinese are very good at using shipping vessels and research vessels as undercover for the military. Like the thing everyone needs to understand with China is that anything that's Chinese is the Chinese government. You know, there's no private businesses, and then anything that the government does, it's the military, right? Like all of their diplomacy, all of their research, all of that is the military running it. It's not just their normal civic duties being played out. They're doing whatever they can to further the aims of their military goals, and it's the same thing in the South China Sea area we were talking about. Is they'll send they'll call them fishing boats or research ships, but they have armed people on them, people getting photos of people with guns on them, and they'll just all they do is they'll just send them into the waters where they shouldn't be, just to provoke and just to be just to flex, pretty much. It's all just these political leaders flexing their power, just trying to say, we'll do something about it, and that's pretty much what China's doing. They're out there right now trying to take control of this massive area of the globe. You know, the biggest body of water is the Pacific Ocean. And there's a lot of landmass as tiny islands throughout the Pacific, and they're trying to. And then what I want to follow up with is countries like the Cook Islands. Think about we were talking about salaries before the live stream. How much do you think is it a prime minister or the highest diplomat of the Cook Islands,
Prime Minister, yeah.
Prime Minister, like how much do you think they're getting a year? There are it is just so easy to just buy all these little countries off, like all they need to do is just give them a few $100,000 or maybe a couple million, which is pennies to these people that run global organizations and a country like China, and it's chump change to them to change these people's lives and to forever have them in their pocket.
Excuse me, Simon. I think we've just lost our camera, so
yeah, he does look a little bit funny there.
Yeah, bear with me for a sec.
Yeah, no worries. For anybody who's chosen to watch this instead of the UFC fight that's going on right now, it's currently in the second round. Looks like a bit of an even battle going on. Both men have got a bit of blood on them, I think. So it looks like a good on scrap, good old fashioned barnstorm.
Oh no, you've lost me completely. It might take a minute for me to come back, but I'm still here.
Worries.
You haven't lost me on the you haven't lost me on the stream entirely.
No, that's right. You're still there. I can hear you.
Yeah,
but you're just looking at
still
me.
Here.
Here I am in the flesh. So I mean, I guess why do I want to bring this story to the show is because I think it's really important that the world that everybody thinks is what's going on is as close to the reality of things as possible. And when you have countries that are so minuscule in their GDP, so vulnerable to be corrupted by these huge superpowers and private companies or even private individuals and families that nobody really knows about, and they're not able to operate independently. Like they just never have a chance. These people, they may even begin to get into politics or to help with the community cause, from a genuine place. But as soon as you get anywhere near the top, it's just people coming for you left and right, trying to influence your decisions and to get you to do a certain thing. And once you get to the very top, you have to operate to a certain game plan or you're out. It's just the way things are. And I just don't want it to escalate into a point where there's hostile forces and physical conflicts going on everywhere in the world.
Hey!
And there you are.
I had to give up on my nice camera and go to my spare one.
Lucky you have a spare.
So, stuff it. We'll figure out what I'm going to do about that. But Simon, yeah, what I want to say on this, like you always bring the massive gems, right? Like I'm always blown away with what you bring. But it strikes me that countries believe they are free. Do you know what I mean? It strikes me that people actually think they're voting for something to happen. When actually, are you free, or is someone bought what's about to happen?
Exactly.
Like, doesn't it strike you how, like, whatever political party the media hypes the most is usually the one that gets in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's really obvious in the United States that both political parties are different wings of the same beast. They are very much a theatrical display of back and forth, and whatever needs to happen on a political level in terms of laws or things happening in the United States, it happens regardless of who's in place, or they are put in place to make those things happen, and then the power cycles out when something else needs to change. But in New Zealand, I mean, I've made this comment on the live stream before, but I don't. The first time I've ever saw, the current prime minister and what was the one of the leaders of the National Party recently on TV was to have them constantly duel it out on breakfast television as representatives of the parties they were from. They were, like really young, and never heard of them before, but for some reason they were always put up against each other to go back and forth, and then just like some magic, they end up both being the leaders of the party at the time and go head to toe. It's almost like if you were to be enthusiastic with conspiracies, you'd say, well, maybe they were putting them up against each other to test the public's opinion of them early, so that they could, plan to see who would be more well liked to be the next prime minister of the country.
Like A/B testing.
Yeah, pretty much, but for prime ministers and parties. Yeah,
Oh
with
my
Labour
god! You really just blew my mind just then. Have we been A/B tested for the last decade?
Well, I mean, maybe it's something didn't sit right with me, and I probably sound crazy to some people, but like it just never sat right with me that we were always fed the same two representatives. It didn't matter the issue, but they were the two people that represented their party, and they ended up both becoming their leaders at the exact same time.
Yep. I'm just replying to our guest, Simon. But right about now, we are going to move to the next story. I do have it racked up. Let me just move to you to give myself some breathing space. That's the whole thing with new scenes, eh? You gotta remember what you're doing. But right about now, what I'd like to be talking about real soon, guys, is there are a couple of people arrested for smuggling KFC. And this is very much only in New Zealand kind of story. So, as I alluded to at the top of the show, Auckland is under level 3 restrictions, and I'm not going to bore you with the detail around this, but what I will say is that in level 4, it was not possible for any takeaway organizations to be opened. So Aucklanders have been very heightened in their awareness that they can't get takeaways. Some very enterprise. I'm looking at Simon smiling about this. Some very enterprising. Well, I'm just gonna call it what it is. Gangsters have picked up on the fact that people were very desperate to get their hands on takeaways, and this is what happened. So that's not great. That wasn't black before, but basically, 2 gangsters were caught with $100,000 cash and a bootload of KFC. Before I go into the rest of the story, Simon, what are your reflections on this?
Well, just shout out to the awesome frontline policemen risking their lives day in, day out to stop people from smuggling dangerous amounts, high quantities of pure fast food into the communities. Like, God on them for just cracking down on the worst of the worst, eh? No, but I mean, fair play, I guess. If you're trying to subvert the community lockdown laws to the benefit of a nice KFC meal, I mean, you're going to end up paying the price of being caught for that. So it's a risk first reward kind of deal. And I mean, I've got no sympathy for the people that got caught. It's a shame that it's something that our police focus so much time and effort on. I mean, if you were to evaluate their trip in terms of risk of exposure and transmission to the community, I'd say it's fairly low. You'd have a group of 4 people traveling in a car to a venue where they'd drive through, get food through a window, drive home, and then not interact with anybody else. So it's probably not the headline grabbing story it should be. It's it's so funny what the public will latch on to. It's really interesting, and I bet journalists have a fun time with playing a game of let's write garbage in a headline and see what sticks, because all journalism is now is the profession of engagement. It is not about telling the truth or about exposing.
I'm so glad you said that, Simon.
Yeah,
I believed that for such a long time.
Yeah, and what it is, like it was so bad at a point in time where you couldn't even tell that you were reading an ad until it was too late. Like they were so underhand with it until they had to be more upfront. But you would have articles that were supposed to look like, or would it be like so and so using new technology to win battle against some disease or something, but all it is literally just a bought and paid for article on this technology, and it's but yeah, it's just because of the internet and people demanding content for free, journalism has suffered, and now all they do is just get your attention for ad revenue and clicks.
The bit that does stick with me about this story is the $100,000. So
yeah.
So for the gentleman, like I would do this too. Like if I was planning some kind of illegal activity, I'd be like, oh yeah, let's also smuggle something that doesn't seem that bad. Like let's smuggle a bunch of hangi, for example, to bring it back to center in terms of the show today. Let's smuggle a bunch of hangi and $100,000 of crack cocaine. So then you kind of split the view on the story there a bit. So very, very enterprising. The article goes into a little bit of detail about the fact that these border busts are not uncommon. Simon, they're wanting to make sure that we understand that the police are doing their job. Since Alert Level 4 came into place, 86 people have been charged with a total of 90 offences as of Sunday 5 p.m, and I'll check the date on this article, but I think that this is a beautifully positioned piece of police propaganda. And I mean, they use the police car hood to display the KFC on, and I think I did see the post on the New Zealand Police Facebook page in the first instance. That's what brought me to the story. So well done, New Zealand Police, for ridiculing people for being hungry.
I think go ahead, Hannah.
What I was wanting to say before Jade spoke is that we've had our Prime Minister specifically say, no one's crossing the border, you can't be an essential worker that really needs to cross the border. Why? So how are these people, first crossing our so-called border to even be able to bring in this amount of KFC? And how could it have not been, if they're going to cross the border, how could it have not been, how did they get a bootload? And how did they, when I say
what do you mean though? You're losing.
A bootload, which I'm trying to explain.
Yeah.
How did they not publicize it to people? A big thing would be social media. So if these people, for whatever reason, were able to cross the border, how did they not actually reach out to people and say, hey, do you want KFC? How did they not have that and hide that from social media nowadays? You think that something would have been done about and investigated there, because that would have been very questionable.
I'm sorry. I'm
And
sorry.
boss.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Final
Oh.
thought, Simon. I just need to say the guest is in the waiting room. So final thought, and then we're going to take a quick break.
I was just gonna say, potentially with the $100,000 cash, the big lot of KFC was probably for all the lads back at the pad to celebrate that great financial transaction that they've just had. Yeah, so potentially they weren't going to supply it to the community. I mean, I thought maybe that, but I think maybe there was a few fellas waiting back at the pad for them, waiting for dinner.
So right about now, ladies and gentlemen, you know we got to tune up these segues a bit better. Mostly my fault. But right now we're gonna take a quick break. We've got our guest Mahia in the waiting room, so there's a few things we need to do behind the scenes to bring him in nice and smoothly. But please bear with us. I'm gonna switch over to our Be Right Back scene and also play an ad from our beautiful sponsors at Twitch. So enjoy that. We'll be right back with you after this. Ladies and gentlemen, we are so excited to introduce what I think is our first guest on the Here Is What We Know podcast, right, Simon?
Yeah, that's right. I think we've had guests, but not branded as this project from an earlier time. But yeah, this is a first for us, so I'm excited. Welcome, Mahia. Great to have you here. Thank you for joining us today.
Mahia Mokaraka, representing the Freedom New Zealand movement. Mahia, I'm gonna give you the floor in a second, just to tell us a bit about yourself and how you would describe the Freedom New Zealand movement, please, for the people at home that would not know about this.
Awesome. Hey, thank you for the opportunity to be here and to join your guys' podcast. To Jade and Hannah, nice to see you again, and Simon as well. Thank you for inviting me on to here and to just share a little bit about the mahi that I'm involved with and what we're up to next Saturday over at Auckland Domain, and why we're doing that. Just a little bit about me. So I met Jade some time ago. For those that don't know, I'm also a wheelchair user. So been in a wheelchair since 2006 as a result of a treatment injury. I used to breakdance and injured myself breakdancing, and as a result of that, sustained a spinal cord injury from T8, T9 down. So that was quite a life-changing moment. But as a result of that, it's kind of moved me into certain areas in terms of like studies and the work that I do on a daily basis. And so I'm also a youth worker. I work for Youth Line and also a trained counsellor. So I do do one-on-one mahi with whānau, with people, young people, adults, and also do youth development programs in schools across South Auckland. So quite busy and quite active. I'm married as well to my beautiful wife, Mariah. We've been married coming up to 2 years. It'll be 2 years in November. So that was gone really quick. But yeah, that's a little bit about me anyway. And,
Awesome,
and I'm living in Auckland as well. East Tamaki is where I'm currently staying with my wife and I. And some really good close friends of ours.
Thank you for telling us that. So Mahia, over the past week, the reason why you came to my attention for the podcast is you've been extremely vocal about certain feelings that you have about the lockdown settings, about human rights, about depression in particular. Tell us why you're passionate about the Freedom New Zealand movement.
Cool. Yeah. So the Freedoms and Rights Coalition is an organization. Well, not really an organization. It is, but it's a group of people who are concerned of with our human rights, what's currently happening at the moment, and the impact of lockdown. Obviously, we have the pandemic in New Zealand. But as a result of that, there's been a lot of issues that I've been seeing. As you know, the type of work that I do with people, kind of recognizing the impact on people themselves, with mental health. And I'm lucky enough to be involved with a sector where I'm updated on a regular basis around the impacts of, this lockdown. The lockdowns in the last, 2020 and 2021, and just the issues that's arising from that, with businesses that are closing, the economic crisis that's happening, the impact on families, and you have the suicide rates that are skyrocketing, and and the lockdowns, the impact of lockdowns itself, in the youth sector, the organization I work with, we've seen a big increase of suicide risk, in terms of people calling into the helpline. There's also been, higher rates of depression and anxiety that's been, people are seeking support with, and there's a lot of stress happening. And I think, I think a key word you mentioned earlier was just a heightened state that New Zealand is in.
Yeah.
Emotionally charged, and
Yeah.
there's these lockdowns, but also some of the policies and the legislations that are coming through that are impacting our families and our whānau is quite concerning as well. And that's why we're quite vocal, and that's why we've come together, ordinary, everyday Kiwis, like myself. You got tradies, you've got business owners, you've got people who have been impacted financially, and also employment from the COVID response. And I must say, yeah, COVID is there and COVID is real. We have seen the impacts of that, but on a wider scheme of things, there's lots of families, who have lost jobs and businesses. Just the other day, I heard that in Auckland alone, there was going to be 1,000 businesses that will be closing their doors because of the impact of this. And also, I heard, I watched an interview from a guy who was a part of the groundswell with all the farmers, and just some of the impact that the legislations and policies that are coming through for farmers. It's going to make it even more difficult for them to produce what they do out in the farming world. So there's a whole lot of things, and the impacts of some of the decisions that government's making, the lockdown in itself, and just the pressure. It's a one big pressure cooker, is how I see it, because there's a lot of things happening, unfortunately.
Mahia, I don't mind saying that on this podcast we've actually been quite critical of the approach to this virus. We've actually talked about the vaccine at length. We've also had some debate about the lockdown settings, and just the fair use of them. There seems to be such a wide-ranging application of them, and like for example, when you're a white couple and you have a house in Wanaka, apparently it's not so bad and we should forgive you straight away. But if you're a Māori woman trying to attend a tangi, you go to jail. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's ludicrous, eh? That's ludicrous, especially for our whānau, especially Pacifica and Māori. Funerals and tangis are quite an important part of our culture, an important part of our healing, important part of us being a part of our family, being together, being able to console, encourage, and love on each other, and just being together. That's a human right that's kind of been denied a lot of our families right across, not only in New Zealand, but right across the world. So I think, I was even a recipient of, I don't know if that's the right word, but I had an uncle. My dad's father passed away last year during lockdown, and we were stopped at the borders. And the saddest thing about that was there was a bunch of us cousins, first cousins. We were all at the borders up in far north, but my auntie, my dad's sister, couldn't even go through the borders to go and join the whānau with our tangi, and be there with our whānau to support and show our love And that was quite devastating too. And my dad, lives in Australia, obviously because we were in lockdown and in the border controls. Yeah, it's ludicrous. It's not good. It's not good for our whānau because we don't know the long-lasting scars that that's going to have for those who can't attend their whānau tangi or you know go to a funeral. So for me, it's that that's why we're standing next Saturday at Auckland Domain at 11 a.m. because some of those real basic human rights that we have as Kiwis, as Pacifica, as Maori and migrants here in New Zealand, those have been denied us. And I just saw a video this morning of a young lady, or I think it was a young lady, and just sobbing and crying because she couldn't join her mother at the cemetery, and she had to stay at the gates and just watch. And you could just see and hear just the pain and the agony in there when she was crying and calling out. So those are the things that are why we're standing. And like you said, some of the lockdown measures are just ludicrous,
Yeah.
and it needs to change. And there's a lot of people suffering right
So
now because they haven't been able to join family with their funeral processions.
I
So
got a
yeah,
question for you, and then I'm gonna hand over to Simon. Well, comment then a question. So,
cool.
Mahia, I completely resonate with everything you're saying.
Mm.
2 weeks ago, I attended 2 Zoom tangi.
Oh wow.
Never in my life did I think I would be watching uh,
Yeah.
funerals of close friends and family on on a Zoom call. Like
Yeah.
I was literally watching this all happen on a Zoom call. So completely resonate with that. Before I hand over to Simon to ask any questions,
Cool.
so are you saying to us that you disagree with the level settings? What exactly is the beef as far as your coalition?
So
What's the beef?
there's a whole lot of them because we're talking about our human rights. So like our rights to gather. Like I'm a man of faith,
Mm.
and church is a very important aspect of my well-being. So we can't even gather. But in the human rights and the Bill of Rights, we have the freedoms to be able to do that, to be at a place of worship where that's quite a big part of my life and my well-being as a Maori, wheelchair user, um, and those are some of the things that have taken away from us. So that's real drastic,
Mm.
and I think those are some of the things that need to change. And I think that's part of the beef too is that a lot of our human rights are being trampled on and denied us. So it's like, hey, yeah, we understand that there's COVID, but your measures that you're using are actually denying us or breaching our human rights. So where do we stand as people now, and why is the state being so controlling over our movements, over our freedoms? It's part of our rights to actually move and be in places and to go out. And
Mm.
those are some of the beefs that I have around with the restrictions at the moment. And I just read in the papers as well. People who were relocating outside of Auckland because they've moved homes for whatever reasons, whether it's for work and that, they can't even go past the borders. And it's like, well, where does the buck stop? Where yeah, I don't know. It's just quite frustrating
And the
to
and the
hear
line
and see that
and the
stuff.
line is, I'll hand over to Simon right now. And the line is, oh, work from home. But what if your job is not capable of that?
Well, that's it. And I saw an article today in the paper where I think it was farmers were saying that they were going to cut people's salary to 80% if they didn't come into work. And and there are some people who casual workers, for example. These lockdowns have affected people who are casual workers who don't get annual leave, or once they've next level 2 or whatever levels that we go down to, and that impacts their families, that impacts their children. If they have children, that impacts their financial will. um yeah, it's things need to change, and I think there's something a lot more sinister behind the scenes that's going on with the state control, from what I see and what I'm observing as well. And we can even look at the education system. The whole control that they're having with what's being taught in schools and what can be said and what can't be said, and the
Oh,
legislations that
give
they're
me an
trying to push
example of
through.
that. Oh, I won't let you run away with a statement like that.
well,
Give us an example of what they're saying in schools.
well, there are some programs that are coming through around, like, again, this is not, I'm not, and yeah, I'm not anti the community, but there are some strict program or education content around, gender identity, gender sexuality, and that type of stuff. So they really they've come up with what do you call it? Education guidelines in terms of what can be said, what
Yeah.
can be taught, and what can't be taught.
Mm.
And then they talk about the whole conversion therapy bill, or conversion practices prohibition legislation that's coming through, where even parents, even youth workers, even whānau. So if that bill does go through, as an uncle, or as a youth worker, or as a father, or as a counselor, or even just as a mentor, talking about gender, sexuality, and that could be banned or could be seen as illegal, and even the rights of our parents, and that kind of scenarios can be taken away. So that's quite concerning, because we always, us as Freedom and Rights Coalition, we advocate for parents' rights. We want to empower parents to be able to be the source of learning and development and education within the home, in the ideal world, and it kind of feels like that even parents will get penalized if something like this comes through. That's why we're quite vocal with some of these issues. And like I said, it's nothing against the community. It's just, hey, where's the rights of our parents, and how is that going to affect me?
Can I just jump in really quickly? Sorry. I just want to
Yep.
follow what you just said, Mahia. That is so right. It's also, what is, where is the curiosity of our children? How are we just going to be restricting our children if they can't feel safe to be able to even speak on those things and learn and understand?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why I'm advocating for it too, because I went through that particular bill, um, and I actually wrote a submission just outlining my concerns as a youth worker, as a counsellor, from a professional perspective, but also from a personal point of view, and because I work in the schools right now, and the dominant narrative right now is, yeah, it's somewhat concerning, because if this bill does go through, then we don't have a voice to stand against the
Yeah.
narrative that's already been pushed in the schools right now. So yeah, these are some of the things that we're really concerned about in terms of legislations, bills. But at the bottom of it, we are pro family, we're pro parents, we're advocating for parental rights. We're advocating for youth rights as well. Just the other day, there were schools down in Wellington, where there's vaccine buses getting pushed in, and they're trying to vaccinate young people. And for me, as a counsellor and a youth worker, the question that comes to mind is, hey, are they giving them good information? Who's providing this information? Are they giving them even sides? Are both sides, like, the benefits? Is there someone that represents the benefits? The pro vaccinations, and is there someone that has a voice of reason that's saying, hey, these are also some of the dangers and some of the not so good things, some of the risks of vaccination, so that our young people can have a balanced, informed choice. And what I do know too in some schools, especially high schools, is that you have a lot of there are some staff not all of them, but there are staff that are quite quite dominating in their perspectives and their views. So who protects them as young people, especially if you have a 15-year-old that says, "Oh no, that's not right. That's not what my parents have told me, or that's not what I know." So who kind of safeguards them? Who looks after them? And those are some of the issues that I see with that stuff. So yeah, very very, as you can hear, I'm very passionate about that stuff. Very passionate about our young people and making sure that they have that they're not coerced or pressured or bribed or forced or put into a place, because schools can be quite a it can be a good environment, but it can be a not so good environment for young people where they may be pressured because of the dominant culture may pressure them into doing something, or peer pressure them into doing something that they may not want to do, but they feel obliged because there's a whole lot of there's a bigger group or a
That's right.
dominant yeah.
I mean, there was an article recently about the schools returning to having more students as alert levels drop, and saying that one day there'll be quite good mask wearing from the students, and then one kid will take it off, and then by lunchtime they've all taken their masks off, and they're not really adhering to what the school wants them to. I mean, if that's just what they're doing for a piece of cloth on their face, imagine if they're taking an experimental vaccination to the arm just because they think, I don't want to be the only person who might be considered crazy. And that's the other thing. It's not like an honest, fair argument from both sides, because as soon as you show any sort of slight deviation from being completely on board with what's happening, you get demonized, and you have no chance of trying to find a balanced middle ground. You just get thrown in the other end, so you end up saying nothing. Then for the people who don't see examples of people standing up, they relent and they give in.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose that's where I see that's a responsibility I have as someone who works in the sectors, to ensure that there is a balanced view on not just the vaccines, but a whole lot of issues against what they're teaching in the schools, and what their rights are as young people, and who's advocating against those who may be using pressuring tactics, or coercing them, bribing them. Hey, there was a school down in Wellington, Taita College. They said that if for every person that gets vaccinated, they get 10 extra points for their house points.
That's so gross. That's so gross. Sorry for interrupting you, but I needed to say that.
Yeah, and I've even had a text myself. If you get your vaccination, you'll go in the draw to win $1,000 from one of my local doctors, and I'm thinking, why is there such a big push even to offer money, to offer food, to offer gift cards, to offer house points for why is there such a push? What are they getting out of it? And I think in this day and world, to say those types of comments can be demonizing in itself, let alone so these are some of the things that we're concerned about as Freedoms and Rights Coalition. And this is why right across New Zealand we're making a stand, and we're going to be in Wellington, we're going to be in Rotorua, Tauranga, Whakatane, Hamilton, Christchurch, Nelson. We're going to be Rotorua. Yes, I did say that. We're going to be up in Whangarei. So there's going to be, because of the restrictions in terms of going out of Auckland and coming in, instead of all having it in Auckland, there's going to be stands right across the country. And I encourage anyone that might be watching this, and anything that I've said or mentioned that's really resonated with you, or struck a chord with you, and you're like, yes, that's right. Jump on, go there. 2nd of October next weekend, next Saturday. Or you can jump on the Facebook page, Freedoms and Rights Coalition. Jump on there and follow the information that's out there.
Thanks, Mahia. So, for people who might be considering going along, what is the main objective for the organisers in trying to get people along? Is it to try and get a bit of a community going? Is it to try and to help the community find a group to help them stand up to is it just to try and find a place where maybe people exist where they don't fully support what's happening.
Yeah, I think everything you said is why we're doing that, is to, kind of kind of bring people in who share the same frustrations, who see what's going on, and want to make their voice seen. Because obviously, a lot of people don't have the opportunity to have their voice heard. So this is a great way of doing that, where they can turn up. As with numbers, that makes a statement in itself, and what we're standing for. Freedoms for our farmers, freedoms for our workforce, freedoms for us as human beings, freedoms for everyone, freedom to choose whether to get vaxxed or not and not be pressured. So those are some of the things that we're hoping to achieve, is to bring people together, so that there's a united voice, and people know what we're standing for, and letting government know that the track that they're going down is not okay for a lot of us, and the decisions that they're making is not okay as well, and also the impacts of their decision making is actually affecting a lot of people, everyday people. Yeah,
No,
I don't know
awesome.
if that answered your question. I hope it
Yeah,
did.
absolutely. And I think I have one more thing before I hand over to Jade if he's got any for you. But so the things with lockdowns is that they say they're for our health, right? It's
Yes.
the best way for us to preserve our health is to stay inside and stay away from everybody. Do
Yep.
you, as a person who works in health, right? Like mental health is as important as physical as it is spiritual. You know,
Yes.
if you're from the Maori world, you think of haora and have the four
Yeah.
dimensions of health, where it's not just about your exposure to a virus is the only important thing in your health. Whether you have regular contact with your family or your
Yeah.
community groups are just as important. Have you noticed, I guess, an example that you want to share where the lockdowns have prevented uh, a more amount of somebody accessing different ways of improving their health that aren't just related to like medical health? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what we do know as a result of the lockdowns is the mental well-being of a lot of Kiwis, a lot of people. And I think this is a worldwide issue as well. The implications of being confined to your house every day, and having the voice of our politicians, or the 1 p.m. Um, what do you call it, hour of sour? I don't know what you call it, but you kind of get deflated watching that after a while. But what we know is human contact. We're social beings. We've never been designed. We weren't designed to be confined to our own homes. We're social beings. Like I've even realized myself how much or how important to my own well-being social connection is with people. And now I'm having to go and see my family, just drive in, stay in my car, and hello, what he's up to, just to get kind of just that human interaction.
Mm.
And as much as I love doing stuff online with Zooms and that, even that's limited in terms of the connection that you get and the well-being that comes from it. So yeah, what we know with lockdowns is mental health has been, the resilience of people has been kind of challenged, because we're confined to our own space, and there's no human contact, no human interaction, social interaction. And so yeah, suicide has also been on the rise as well. So 1 in 5, we had some statistics released just recently, for the year of 2020 and 2021. 1 in 5 texts that came to our helpline was around suicide, and I think 2 in 5 texts that came into our helpline was around suicide risk, anxiety and depression, and self-harm as well. So I think that highlights that a lot of issues take place when we're locked down or
Mm.
confined or isolated. Isolation is one of the key factors that we know in our field. Isolation is a key factors that increases the risk of, or the impact of, depression. Because we are social beings. So if we're isolated for a long amount of time, then we are at risk of experiencing the impacts of depression, and what we call lockdown fatigue is something that I've learnt, and I've gone through what is lockdown fatigue, and then I'm like, oh man, that sounds like me. I'm like losing, feeling tired and then low motivation to do things, and just frustrated at the lockdowns. So those were some of the symptoms that I found out, and I'm sure a lot of us have experienced that during the lockdowns.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just we're social beings. We need that. That's for our own mental health, and that's why I went out to Auckland Domain yesterday. Yeah, I did go for a drive, but you know what? There were hundreds of people at Auckland Domain. It was a beautiful day. Families, people kicking the ball around, people running, people exercising. Majority of them didn't have masks. There were some that were lining up to get a coffee. Some were just sitting in the shade and just enjoying the beautiful day. And I went there too, and I did some exercise and enjoyed the sun, and was just enjoyed seeing people out and about and happy. And even there was Mr. Whoopi down there, and everyone getting ice cream and just doing everything that we do as Kiwis, as New Zealanders. And,
Immensely more healthier for people to be out there
yeah,
in the sun,
Exactly.
getting some gentle exercise than to be sitting
Yeah,
at home,
in a
safe
nice
from everybody
breeze.
else. Yeah.
Yeah, nice breeze, and you could hear people laughing. You see the kids on their bikes, all running around. That's. And I was like, man, this is therapy, or this is self care, or this is just healing. Just observing that, letting all my senses go wild, and experiencing what it's like to be out there, enjoying ourselves on
Mahia,
these beautiful days.
I've got some 101 questions for you. So, what would you
Yep.
say to the cuz not everybody likes this show. We have opposing views on here all the time.
Yep.
Don't you guys feel this is getting old now, the lockdown? So we got someone in the chat, Doco 420. Don't you feel
Hey, Ducko.
the lockdowns are getting old now?
Oh yeah,
Mahia.
absolutely. It is. It's it's drawn out now. It's played up. I think we need a change, and we need to yeah. Otherwise, what's going to happen? What we do know is that the longer lockdown goes, the more impact it has on people's well-being. And what do we prefer to do? Impact everyone in Auckland's well-being, or open up the restrictions and improve well-being? What we know too is hey, if we improve people's well-being, then they function better and they operate better, and there's better outcomes, and we're healthier. And so that's where I'm looking, is like the longer we stay in lockdown, the more detrimental it is to us.
But then
And yes, there is COVID up there, but
yeah, but
hey,
my question was gonna be, before Doco came in, Mahia, my question was gonna be, what would your response be to the haters that come into the stream that might say to someone like you, Mahia, this is a public health issue. You just need to put up and shut up and do as you're told.
well, actually, I got a great response to that, because I know there were some people that were asking from some of my comments that I put on social media and videos that, hey, the organizers of the event spoke with the police the other day, and the police are fully supportive of what we're doing on the day, and fully are going to support us on the day, because there's going to be a big motorcade of tractors, cars, motorbikes that are going to be coming along the motorway. So the police are involved. What they've advised us is to ensure that we're all wearing masks, and that it is a peaceful assembly or peaceful gathering, and that's what we're known for when it comes to creating gatherings. It is a peaceful stand. It's going to be a picnic. It's going to be a whānau event. So we're not going to go out there and throw paint bombs at the police, or cause a big massive riot, or create a violent outcome. we're going there for peace, and you know what? Together, the reason why the police allowed us to go along with this event or go ahead with this event is because they knew and they know that this is our right as citizens, as Kiwi, as Māori, as Pacifica, as New Zealanders to be able to gather peacefully, and so yeah, we're not going to please everyone, but that's okay. Those that are keen to jump on board will come, and I think that gives the public reassurance as well that if the police are supporting it, then it's okay because we've had those conversations.
It's
And
interesting you say the police is supporting this because, like, on my little notepad off to the side that you can't see, getting my questions ready for today, right at the top was gonna be, aren't you afraid of getting arrested? Aren't you afraid? And even if you're not, even if you're not afraid of getting arrested, aren't you afraid of how the media might spin it if only one or two people are arrested? Aren't you afraid of the optics?
Nah, not really. I have been arrested in the past for stupid stuff, things that I just shouldn't have done, obviously because I broke the law.
Yeah.
But if we were to get arrested, but it's not going to happen. But just hypothetically, if we were to get arrested, it wouldn't look too good in terms of why have you arrested us when we're being peaceful, and there hasn't been any aggravation, no violence. So nah, not really. There is no fear there, and I think because we know that the police understand it's going to be a peaceful event, yeah, nah, not at all. Hey, I'd rather get arrested for something that that's around our freedoms and rights than get arrested for trying to bring KFC into Auckland.
I'll just see if Simon's got any questions. Sorry? Fines. You want to ask a question?
So, Mahia, I was, so if you're not arrested, has there been any question about, well, what if the police decide to start handing out fines like they were in level 4 for breaching
the
locations?
$2,000 fine, did you hear about that, Mahia? People that
Oh.
weren't sticking to their bubbles were getting $2,000 fines?
Wow. Oh, that's quite interesting because I saw a whole lot of people yesterday out in Auckland demanding I'm sure they were their bubbles. And so I don't think it'll be an issue. Like,
Great.
I personally don't think so because we're perfectly in our rights, and I think that's where the whole fearmongering has come in as well. Like stay home, you can't go out, but we also have a right to movement in our towns and our cities and in our neighborhoods. It's in the human rights. It's part of our Bill of Rights that we can freely move in the land. Obviously with reason, and obviously we can't get through the borders, and that's the thing, with the COVID response act. Oh man, even that's shocking because really restricted people, and it's really pulled the noose over the population of New Zealand of what we can and can't do, and given more powers to the state, and that's rah. So yeah,
I'm gonna pass it over to Simon, but I really want to ask you this, Mahia, because I obviously know you're a youth worker.
yes.
Why do you think it is that it's not been laid out to Aotearoa's young people that the vaccine only has provisional approval? Why do you think it's not been highlighted that it's not actually completed medical trials yet? Why do you think that is?
Well, I think what people know, that young people are impressionable and will follow what kind of what people in power will say. They that they'll try with adults, but they know that it's a sealed deal if they give young people and like kind of coerce, bribe, whatever they do to try to get people vaccinated. But for me, that's where I'm like, no, where's this other information? You need to give two sides of the argument so that these young people can make an informed choice and an informed decision, and they've got all the information that they need, accurate, good, accurate information to make sound decisions. And that's what we advocate as youth workers, is giving young people. And in fact, it's one of the top. So there's 6 principles of youth development, and one of them is good information. Good youth development is giving young people accurate, up to date, good information so that they can make sound choices with whatever they want to do with their health and well being, with their future or whatever. But I think they're trying to pull the wool over our young people's eyes. And they know that young people are a bit more easier to convince or easier to put them into the sheep pen, as to say, are probably more compliant as well. However, that's why there's voices like myself and many who will really encourage them to educate themselves around your rights as a human being, as a young person, your rights as a 15, 16, 18, 19, 12-year-old, and stand firm in those, because it's important. And maybe that's part of the reason why too, is that the politicians or whoever at the top um, are hoping that their ignorance of their rights is going to allow them to get away with stuff. But I really think there's some financial um, things involved as well. I'm kind of trying to. I've been trying to research, like, how much is each health provider getting for each vaccination. I know
Exactly.
for tests, I know for the COVID, I know for the COVID tests they get I think it's around $280 per test that's completed. So if you times it by 1 million, that's a lot of money for a health provider, or health providers. So I'm thinking, how much money is um, providers or the government getting per vaccine shot? I don't know. It's hard to find that information unless you're in the circles. Yeah.
I, ju-
That's why I think our youth voice is important. And I'm advocating, don't forget our young people, don't forget our youth. They're just as important as adults. Don't forget their voice. So we're being very vocal in terms of getting youth voices heard around some of the issues that are happening today in our world of New Zealand. And that's why I'm going to be a strong advocate for young people as well, because I want to ensure that they have good, accurate information, and that they're not coerced, they're not forced, they're not pressured, they're not sucked in, they're not bribed, they're not like, oh, I feel out of place, so I have to fit in and try and, oh yeah, I'll jump in with you because I'm out of place, and go along with what you're doing. So yeah, we want
I
to help them.
cannot tell you how refreshing this conversation is. Simon and I are in violent agreement with most of what you've said today.
Awesome.
This has been a great chat. We're probably looking at needing to wrap in a second. But Simon, any final questions for Mahia before we promote the heck out of what Mahia is doing?
It's I don't know if it's much of a question, but it's more of a bit of an observation and I guess a bit of a message. But yeah, I'm sure you must be following what's going on in Australia, and you can see that publicly they're a few months ahead of the curve because they've had months and months of lockdowns, and their industries are a lot more have been affected than us. But you can see that very recently these what were supposed to be peaceful events have turned not very peaceful once they've been instigated and inflamed by the policing powers that come in to extinguish the protests. And I just guess, is your team taking any precautions or being aware that potentially you could have all the peaceful intentions that you might have, but it is in the best interests of the state powers that be that they antagonize you until they can paint you as an aggressive group of people breaking
Mm,
COVID rules?
yeah, nah. Hey, that's a great question. And what I would say to that is, we've been we've been pushing the message amongst the people who have been coming that this is a peaceful march, or not a march, a peaceful gathering, and we're not. Our intent is not to cause any, be violent. Our intent is not to be, yeah, not to kind of demonstrate what's happened around the world in terms of some of the marches or protests that they've done, and we've been quite clear from the get-go, and we have also prepared too that if there are people who do turn up who are have other intentions, then
Rack
as
it
long
up.
as as long as we are reminding ourselves that we're remaining peaceful. This is not about violence. It is a peaceful gathering. There's more. I think there's more to take away from a peaceful gathering than there is from a violent one. And I think we don't know who's going to turn up as well. There may be some who oppose, but what I do know is that there is going to be security there, and I know I'm quite sure. Yes, I'm sure. Yeah, the police will be there too, but it is going to be peaceful, and we have no intentions. If there is any violence or anything, it'll probably be from external people who don't have contact with us, because that is our intention. Because we're going to have kids there. We're going to have families there. It is a family picnic. What I forgot to mention too is that there's going to be the farmers are bringing 10 ton of food, produce from their farms to give away.
That's
That's
amazing.
just their way
Yep.
of,
Yeah, respect.
yeah, give it. And then, yeah, I just heard also yesterday that there's going to be another 10 ton of food like eggs and bread and different things. And so we're encouraging people to bring bags, those, because especially at a time like this with lockdown, finances can be a bit tight for some
Of
families,
course.
and food can be, scarce in some homes. So hey, give it up to all the farmers and some of the charities that are on board that are giving food and providing food. So yeah, it is going to be a peaceful gathering, and we do have a team that's put in place to ensure that that's maintained. Yeah,
Yeah, that's good because there's examples up and down the country, all through history, across the world, of
yeah,
peaceful organizations that have been hijacked and infiltrated by government organizations to discredit them.
yeah,
The apartheid tour here in New Zealand,
yes,
the anti-Vietnam War movement in the United States, even things like the well, depending either side. So the people from Antifa who protest Black
yeah,
Lives Matters,
yeah,
there's definitely people who are antagonizing those protests to make them violent.
yeah,
And then on the same side of the people who protesting like the American election, a lot of those people that rushed into the Capitol State Building have come out to
yes,
be federal agents. So
yeah,
it's quite a common tactic. So I hope
yeah,
let's hope they don't try it on Saturday, because it's pretty underhanded, and I hope it's a very peaceful event that goes
yeah,
successful for all of you, and the whole community comes out to get behind the cause and take advantage of some free kai. That'd be awesome.
yeah,
Mahia,
definitely.
you've given us almost an hour of your time, which we are extremely grateful. I do have one question, and I'm mindful how pointed this sounds, being the last question of the podcast.
Hey,
But
they like they say, the last save the best for last.
save the best till last. You do realize the media will absolutely vilify you if anybody gets COVID from that event. You realize that, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some of the directives and information that we've been given is that's why they wanted us to wear masks on the
Yep.
day. It was just to take safety precaution. There is going to be sanitizer and obviously all the crowd control. What do you call it? Things put in place, safety plans put in
Yep.
place. So that's why police have directly informed us, please bring masks, and you know, but at the same time, yeah, and that's it. When our rights are kind of squashed, like it's like, hey, we have this freedom together peacefully, but um government and people are telling us this. So it's like that's the dilemma that we have
Yeah.
with a whole lot of different things, eh?
Yeah.
So that's and I think knowing that the police are going to be there and supporting us is a big um, plus for us. But I also say for those who do come and want to cause division or want to cause violence, at the end of the day, it's going to show who they are, and it's probably going to highlight how we are as a movement and as people, because we'll all like you said, Antifa got found out, the federal agents got found out, and if these people that try to come and cause division and cause violence get found out, then it's going to make them look silly. But it actually might make us look good because we've been able to be composed and be peaceful regardless of whatever the situation is.
Mahia, we've got to wrap now, but before we wrap this interview, tell people how they can get involved and how they can find your movement on the internet, please.
Awesome. So you can jump on Facebook or Instagram, search up Freedoms and Rights Coalition, or look for the hashtags Freedoms NZ, or the I forgot the website, but if you go to the Facebook Freedoms and Rights Coalition, also next Saturday, 11 a.m. at Auckland Domain. Come and join us if you're in Auckland, if you're in Whangarei, Hamilton, Tauranga, Whakatane, Rotorua, Wellington, Christchurch, Nelson. If you're in any of those locations, there's going to be something local for you if you want to join in as well. And it is for everyday people. It's for the tradies, it's for the nurses, the teachers, it's for us, for those of us who are in the disability community. And I encourage some of us because, one last thing, can I share this?
Sure,
And
go ahead.
suppose,
This is
I
your
suppose because
segment. This is your segment.
I suppose because we are, some of us, like I know Jade and Hannah, we are from the disability community.
Yep.
And I'm looking, my wife and I, we're trying to buy a house, and it's like, where are all the accessible homes when there's
Don't
a
get me
human right?
started, mate. Don't get
There's
me
a
Another
human
started.
right.
podcast.
We have a human right to accessible housing. So I'm like, I don't want to have to buy a house that's not accessible and then have to pay more money to get it,
Barely
renovated.
livable. Yeah, barely livable.
Yeah, being livable for someone that's a wheelchair user,
Mm.
and I'm like, even that alone is like, hey, where's our rights? Where's our voices? Where have we been just pushed to the side and you're over there and I'm like, nah,
Absolutely.
that's not okay. And that's another angle of why I'm going there next Saturday too, is to stand for us, those who are part of the disability community, and that irks me. And I've been discriminated from applying for jobs, because I'm in a wheelchair. And
Mm.
they're like, "Oh, sorry, we can't. We're community based." And and this is a DHB organization,
Oh
and it's
wow.
like, come on, man, and yeah, and those are some of the things that I'm standing for too. The discrimination we face as people from the disability community.
Mahia Mokaraka from the Freedom New Zealand movement. It's been so great to have you on the show this evening.
Thank
We're
you.
going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back after these messages from the good people at Twitch. that was Mahia Mokaraka from the Freedom New Zealand movement. Simon, it's been a good couple of hours. I think we should move in to final thoughts. What do you think?
Yeah, man, it's been a blast. 2 hours just kind of flew by. Stimulating conversation, as our friend Mahia said. So I mean, yeah, it's been a lot of information to take in, and he just made a lot of great points. It was very nice to hear someone from a movement make some really well articulated points about the wide range of effects on our community that the current COVID response is happening. You know, just a division via vaccination status that we kind of touched on, but mainly just on the suppression of our freedom, our suppression of our natural human instinct to be connected intertwined, you know, humans. Our lives are meant to bounce and reflect off each other, not to exist as separate, you know, threads in time. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what comes of the movement and the protest, because every sort of in-person public display is to warrant a response, and it's just natural to kind of war game things out and play it out in your head and think, okay, well, what are the likely responses? And something that I talked about briefly, and I honestly think is possibly quite likely and a little bit concerned that could happen, is the baiting of this peaceful group into a situation, kind of like what he said, when you have your freedom squashed. It's the same tactic they use with public displays of protesters. They'll squish them into an area where the group of people feel backed up and confined, and all they're trying to do is antagonize them into approaching the line of defense, you know, try and engage with the police, and then they can have free license to go out and start dishing out some pain. So I mean, that's one of the possibilities. The other thing I think could happen is, you know, you just get a whole bunch of people fined on the spot, which I don't think would happen. The biggest thing I think happens is that the whole group gets demonized. Maybe they pick on some people who are, you know, quite happy to engage with media on the day, and then those people get doxxed and their lives ruined. I'm just thinking the worst thing that could happen from this day is 3 News go along and interview some, you know, dad with his kids or something, and he starts saying, I think you know, it's rubbish, all these rules, whatever. He might make some points, and then all of a sudden the online social media just tarnishes him. They go after his workplace, they go after his kid.
They twist the context of what he was saying, which is so important. The context of what you're saying is almost more important than what you're captured saying.
Yeah, dude, and it's just so worrisome. I could see some parents must be so scared about balancing their rights of being able to dictate the health of their child versus getting child protection services called on them for potentially, you know, restricting healthcare to their kids. It's the same situation spun different ways, but you know, you could have a parent looking out for the best interests of themselves, but in the same media story, that person could be vilified for negligence and you know, could potentially lose their child if they're in like a split parenting relationship.
Exactly.
Or, yeah.
What I saw the real value of that interview for me is that, Simon, I'm worried that people like ourselves are being framed as like freakazoid individuals. What I'm hoping people will see from this demonstration is that it's not a bunch of extremist, right-wing, freakazoid individuals that want to be free. It's actually regular, everyday New Zealand people in whānau.
Mm-hmm. It is just everyday people. It's people who want to be left alone and to just exist in a free and just society and not have their life completely dictated to them from start to finish. I mean, it's just, but for these people and for people similar to us, we just think, is it not too much to ask to have the quintessential freedoms that humans should be born with?
Hannah, I wonder if you've got any final thoughts before we wrap.
Definitely.
Yep.
So, one thing I was gonna say following on is, okay, first off, we're adults, and now the virus is going to be a part of our future. I think it's going to be something that we're just going to learn to live with. If you're not feeling well, just don't go out and don't abuse the situation and spread COVID around. Just simple. But then the continuation is what I picked up from what Mahia said was really what I've noticed is, and I've really been disgusted with, is having that balanced view about the vaccine. So it's not happening, and the situation that I find in here is that the two sides aren't being sold, and then, you know, from our leaders of the country, they're saying, oh, you've got to get
Just do it.
90%, just do it, it's alright, that's fine. And then I think it's so disgusting how people are being told, oh, you get 10 house points.
Oh, that made me
And-
cringe. How about you, Simon?
Yeah, I heard about that already. I just, yeah, when he brought that up, it just brought it back to me. It makes your skin crawl. It's. If you thought a vaccine was a great idea, you would think maybe there are some things that could offer that would give people real tangible benefit to get this vaccine. Now, why in the world would you offer fictitious points for a silly school-based house competition for somebody to undertake a medical procedure as serious as getting a vaccine that was developed last year in response to a virus that they'd known about for 6 months?
Yeah, and what I was also going to say is that, so it's also not being told the truth about
The provisional use.
because I heard of a story today that an adult with children was told, oh no, it's all good.
It's definitely approved. And I was like,
It's definitely
definitely
approved.
not approved.
It's definitely approved. Oh, the Ministry of Health approved it. Oh, who's And then somebody said, well, MediSafe didn't approve it. Who's MediSafe? What do they matter? They don't do anything. Well, they're the ones who have to approve it, and they haven't approved it.
Real fast, I know we're kind of jumping around trying to wrap up the show. Simon, were you aware that as of last week, taking into account, 2020 when this all started, there have been 14 deaths from the vaccine in New Zealand, none of which is reported. Easily searchable on the MediSafe website.
Yeah, exactly. Anybody who looks up vaccine injury within New Zealand can find that with a couple clicks, but you don't hear anyone talking about it because apparently they've all been investigated and there was no plausible link to their death to the vaccine. So thank you very much for those people investigating and telling me that I have absolutely nothing to worry about their vaccine that they're pushing on me with every facet that they can think of.
One other
And
thing I
to
just
the
want to add
real
is
fast.
fast is what with that status, it's not also added in the force of required abortions or miscarriages for babies because of an individual taking the vaccine.
Yeah, I think we covered that briefly last week.
Yeah, but saying 14 deaths plus.
Oh yeah, definitely. But what I was gonna say in response to what Simon said is like inconclusive evidence. Sure, I read those statements as well. Yeah, sorry about it to those 14 people that died. How about we just tell their families no one cares why they died? Even if they can directly correlate it to the vaccine. Oh, well, whatever. Move on. Anyway, with that artful, awkward pause, I think we're going to leave it there.
Can we do a tribute?
For today. Hannah's reminded me of one more thing we need to do, and we're going to do that really quickly because, we're running out of time.
So I just want to bring up, we have suddenly got some sad news today. Now, we've been informed that one of our followers, their wife actually reached out to Jade, and he was a good friend, and we'd actually talked about meeting him at TwitchCon one day, and he was an impressive man, but sad to say that this was his username. The streamer Smack has passed away, and he's left a wife and a few beautiful children, but you're a good man, Smack, and thank you so much for who you are and the love and support you gave to others. Thank you.
Yeah, he definitely brought energy to the stream. Simon, I think you've interacted with him at least a handful of times.
Yeah, wow. I knew you'd had a fan pass away, but I didn't know the name. It instantly recognized as soon as Hannah said it. Yeah, we definitely had a couple back and forths through the chat. So, my condolences to the whānau, and rest easy to the big man.
But in wrapping, I just want to say to everybody out there, thank you for being with us for Here's What We Know, episode 6. Hope you like the whole new layout, and we'll continue to tweak this as we go. Simon, been an absolute pleasure working with you as always. Looking forward to next week. Feel free to follow me on social media. You'll find copies of this episode on Apple iTunes. We have it on YouTube. We have it on Odyssey. We're exploring all kinds of avenues to make sure people can get this content. But for now, thank you for being a part of the channel. Thank you for being a part of the journey. Please stay awesome.
And we'll see you all in the next one.
We'll see you soon.